Hello everyone, it's Nox, and today I wanted to post an updated guide to the Hydra Sorceress. I didn't include any gameplay footage in the last one, as many of you let me know in the comments, and I wanted to say thank you to those of you who did comment, and I appreciate it, and also I apologize for not including that. Nobody really wants to see a guide and not have some gameplay footage, so the footage you're seeing in the background now is this character's 2.0. When I was rebuilding it, because I had to rebuild it because I had disassembled the character after the previous video, I found a significant amount of mistakes that I made, and I made the build significantly better. And it plays better, it's a lot smoother, a lot more damage, it's somehow even tankier, and yeah, I'm loving it even more than I did before. Again, for those of you who didn't see the previous one, which I will probably delist once this video goes live, is I got to level 100 with this exact same build. Again, slight modification to the Paragon tree, so it has 30% more damage now, so you guys will have an even better time than I did. Got to level 100 on solo self-found hardcore. I was like 17th in the world or something like that, if you happen to care. And Hydra feels great, Firewall feels great, Sorc feels great. While this gameplay footage runs in the background, I do want to mention that there's a couple things about the build that are kind of like iffy little sticking points. One of them being the champion mobs that have a damage reduction aura. Because you're using Hydra, they attack what they want to attack. So they're not always attacking that priority target the same way like a player would. So I get around this by dropping Hydras as close to them as possible, sometimes directly on top of them, and dropping firewalls directly on top of them. If you notice stuff isn't dying, that's probably why. Try to just resummon your Hydras directly on top of those mobs and things will blow up pretty quickly. I want to say this build is probably too tanky, and you could drop a significant portion of the defense for more offense, and I'll get into that later in the video when we're talking about uniques. But yeah, so let's just jump into the character real quick. I'll show you how I built it, and then I'll leave you with a nightmare dungeon. So jumping in game here is the updated version of the character. Let's start really quick with the skill tree. We're going Firebolt into Glinting Firebolt. We are maxing out Fireball. This is for additional clear, makes it feel nice and comfy. We are going 1 point into Flame Shield all the way into Shimmering Flame Shield. It's just for the extra heal, feels nice. I go Teleport into Enhanced Teleport. I do want to note you can take Shimmering Teleport if you feel you need additional damage reduction, but again, I think this build is a little bit too tanky. We take 1 point into Elemental Attunement. This is just so the resets can happen. We take max points into Hydra. This is our main source of damage. And we go into Summoned Hydra for the additional burn. 2 points into Align the Elements, 2 into Mana Shield for damage reduction, 2 into Protection for the barrier. This synergizes with one of our aspects to give us extra damage. I take 3 points into Conjuration Mastery. Again, this is solo self-found hardcore, but I think that this could easily be swapped into Glass Cannon, both in hardcore and softcore. I haven't felt too risk of dying, but again, your mileage may vary. I'd say if you play softcore, drop these for Glass Cannon every single day of the week. 3 points into Precision Magic for Lucky Hit. This will become evident here in just a bit. Inner Flames, maxed out, just more damage while you're healthy. Devouring Blaze, maxed out. This is mostly for the critical strike damage against burning enemies. We don't care if they're immobilized at all. We do take the immobilization just to make some mobs stick to the floor. It's not that big of a deal, but we aren't building around this necessarily. Maxing out Firewall and going into Mage's Firewall. Again, this is required. Firewall sucks without this. Definitely take it. Jumping down into our ultimate skill, we do take Inferno. That's just a group of enemies, and we do take the Supreme Inferno just to make the mana costs free. This lets you spam Firewall on a single target. Feels very nice. 1 point into Fiery Surge, 3 points into Endless Pyre for the additional burning damage, and 1 point into Warmth for just a little bit of healing and sustain so you don't have to spam potions if you're getting hit through your barriers and all of that. We are taking Combustion. This scales very well with everything we're trying to do. Hydra burns, Firewall burns, feels very nice. The main change as far as building the character from the previous video is this node right here, Frigid Fate. So at first glance, this doesn't make sense because we're a fire build. Why would we want cold damage? But you'll see in just a second. Frigid Fate says you deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies equal to a total 10% of our total bonus to cold. So you basically need 300% bonus damage to cold. Why do we take that? We take that because we stack a ton of non-physical damage. And this non-physical damage totals, especially with the couple of rolls I'll show you in a second on my gear, well over 300% added cold. We take non-physical damage because it scales our conjuration, aka our Hydra. So from the very beginning of the Paragon tree here, I'll just run over everything for you guys. We come up here through Elementalist for the extra non-physical damage. We take Enchanter here and every single int node and every single non-physical damage node. I do grab the resist here, it helps you cap. Then we come up to the Searing Heat board. I have it positioned this way, so there's minimal travel over here. We throw in the Pyromaniac glyph. This is just 10% flat damage. Feels really good. We're casting all the time. We are always casting Hydras in front of us. We're always casting firewalls in front of us. This is a great benefit to our damage. Jumping through Combustion, all the way up to Searing Heat, all the way to Pyromancy, and then all the way to the next board, which is our Burning Instinct board. This is where we throw in our Glyph of Destruction, and we get as much dexterity as we can here as a result. We jump over here, we jump over to Frigid Fate, as I mentioned, and then for our last couple points, we grab this Lucky Hit Chance, and that'll synergize very well with one of the aspects. Coming over to the next board, we have Elemental Summoner. This is sort of the bread and butter as far as our elemental scaling or our non-physical damage scaling. We grab our non-physical damage here, grab Elemental Summoner, come down, grab the Glyph. We throw in Conjurer here. You could throw in the, the Adept Glyph for the increased area on Firewall. I've switched back and forth between the two. Your mileage may vary. I think Hydra is sick, so I'm throwing in Conjurer now. So we grab these for extra resist. Again, if you have extra resist rolls in your gear, you can drop some of these. We come up through here for extra attack speed and conjuration skill damage. We come up to the Enchantment Master board. And this is where we throw in the Elementalist Glyph. We're only getting 2 of these benefits here, but it's still a 10% damage multiplier, and we'll take it. This is boosting our non-physical damage here and our resistances here. We grab this non-physical damage node cluster there, and we snake our way up to Burning Instinct, which says our burning damage is increased by 10% of our critical strike damage bonus, plus 1% for every 75 intelligence you have. So again, this is just a nice multiplier on our Paragon. And that's Paragon covered. You'll notice we have quite a bit of int. I want as much int as possible. Feels good to have, and it helps with caps our resistance, and it's just flat damage, so we like that. So going over our gear real quick, we have the Storm Swell and Conceited. These are both multipliers to our damage when we have a barrier. One requires the enemy to be vulnerable, and the other is just anytime we have a barrier. Ideally, one of these will be on your amulet. I happen to have Amulet of the Elements, but again, my gear's kind of scuffed because I didn't have another like another max rolled aspect. I use Incendiary Loop on the other ring. This just gives you mana. It's nice to be able to spam a little bit more. Serpentine is definitely required for any Hydra build. It just gives you 1 additional Hydra. And Battlecasters. I mentioned in a previous video that I didn't think this was worth it. I now think that it is. We have enough lucky hit chance now with the wand that this ends up having a pretty high uptime. If I'm casting Hydras in front of me and they're always attacking and I'm sort of like picking up the pace and keeping moving, you definitely have this while you're clearing, and you 100% have it on a single target because your Hydra is just beating the crap out of the boss the entire time. So this is now worth it. This is essentially 30% more damage to Hydra. Ends up working out just fine. Moving on to our defensive aspects, we use Helm of the Protector. This just gives us a barrier when we hit an elite enemy. This procs both the Conceited and the Storm Swell aspect. We use the aspect of Disobedience. That might be overkill. I have 10,000 armor on this Sorc. I don't necessarily think that I need any more, but it's nice to have for higher level Nightmare dungeons. And then finally, we have you take reduced damage from crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. Enemies are always vulnerable because of one of our vampiric powers. And Ghostwalkers, just bonus movement speed after you're unstoppable. and it allows you to move freely through enemies, which is very, very nice. Speaking of vampire powers, we apply Vampiric Curse with a Cursed Touch. They are always vulnerable because of a Cursed Touch and because of Vampiric Curse, because of Prey on the Weak. Flowing Veins gives us 60% multiplicative damage to enemies that have the curse, so these three are insane together. And then we have Ravenous. So Ravenous is another change from the previous version of the build. This gives you a ton of attack speed, and it's up a lot, especially with our additional lucky hit chance with the wand. I think that this is definitely worth it, and definitely a sure, like a lock-in slot for this build. I didn't have it before. I noticed switching to it was a considerable damage increase, so definitely give this a try. And finally, we have Sanguine Brace. This is for the Fortify. I love having Fortify on a Sorc. It feels insane. The extra crit is nice too, but the extra Fortify feels really, really great. If you don't feel like you need the extra tankiness, you can drop this for Metamorphosis totally. I could totally see that being just fine. The extra unstoppable and uptime on your movement speed is great, but I like Sanguine Brace. Try it out. You have all these powers unlocked anyway, so give it a try. And that is it for the guide. Try to make it shorter this time around and a little bit more efficient with some better showcase of the gameplay. I do appreciate those of you who left comments in the first video giving me feedback. It helps me get better at this, and I appreciate that very much. If you enjoy the style of content and you enjoy, the way that I'm showcasing the build now, it'd be great if you dropped a like or a follow. It helps me out quite a bit. I will leave you with this last little bit of this Nightmare dungeon. It's only a 61, nothing crazy. Boss damage, like I mentioned previously in the video, isn't insane. This isn't killing bosses in 2 seconds like Ball Lightning or anything like that, but I think Hydra is a fun play style, and I think that it's worth playing. Again, it got me this character this far. I enjoyed the process the whole way, and hopefully you will too. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.